Thank you, Rick. Thanks, everybody, for coming and joining. And Rick, you can hear me fine?
Yes, you sound fine, Tim.
Okay. So today the agenda is that we're going to discuss solar security needs, the grid lock system and features, how the system's installed, and then company contacts and questions. And I'll just keep moving on. So, you know, the solar industry has been growing. It's been growing at a pretty significant rate for a number of years, since about 2000. And in 2009, 2008, we had 40–50% growth in the solar industry. 2010, we had 30 or 40%. 2011 is supposed to be the same. The industry is flattening a little bit, but more than just flattening, it's kind of changing. The United States only accounted for less than 10% of the solar industry, and I think that that's going to increase as some of the feed-in tariffs from Germany and Spain go away. But the industry is going to continue to grow. Oops, wrong button. So what we're going to talk about is the theft of solar panels. And the theft of solar panels is actually, the increase in theft essentially tracks the increase in the market. So as the solar industry continues to grow, there tends to be more and more theft. It's a little challenging to get specific numbers about how much theft there is, because people who do have theft often don't want to really share it with people. There are a number of existing solutions out there that are common. Theft-resistant fasteners are the most common solution. The installation of security cameras is a common security solution for virtually any need. Motion sensors, fencing, and one thing we don't have on here is remote installations, or out of sight, out of mind. People tend to think that if I put it somewhere where nobody sees it, it's therefore safe. That's not necessarily true. None of these solutions are tailored for the solar industry. These are kind of standard industry solutions that have been applied to a new industry and a new market. So here's a picture. This is a winery out in California. They had locking fasteners on their solar system. You can see that they still got away with, I think it was about 30 or 40 modules off of this system.
Tim, if I could interrupt for a second. A couple people were having trouble hearing you. I was wondering if you could just speak into your headset a little louder.
Yeah, I have a headset on. Can they hear me now, or?
I can hear you fine, and I just got a couple of comments that the audience can also. So if you continue speaking like that, it should be okay.
Okay. Do I need to go back, or are we fine where we are?
I think we can continue.
Okay. So here's a roof-mounted system. Here's a system with a fence around it, and barbed wire, so they thought it was nice and secure. They had 130 modules stolen from this one, about $130,000 worth of modules at the time. Here's another photo. This is actually the same system, but it shows you how remote this system is. This system is a mile down a dirt road. They have locking gates at the entrance to the dirt road. And as I said, they put a fence around it with locking gates on the fence. They had barbed wire around it and still had a theft. There's a school district, another
Tim, we think we just lost your audio. If you can hear me, let's try to take this school roof slide again. And just bear with me 1 minute. And Tim, we're still not able to hear you. I'm going to try to have you join with the phone line. Just to let you know, we're having a little technical difficulty. Tim's computer crashed. One of the benefits, disadvantages of a web-based meeting. He is reloading the meeting center and should be joining us in just a minute.
I'm speaking. Do you hear me yet, or?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm not hearing you through my headset, though.
Okay, Tim, I think we're back there. If you can go back to the presentation tab, then we should get started, and I'll hang up on the other line.
Sorry about that, everybody. You know, computers are awfully nice, but sometimes they create challenges.
Yeah, and if you could go ahead and speak up again, it was back to that soft appearance of the first couple slides.
Okay, let me look at this real quick and see if I need to turn it up. It seems to be up all the way.
Okay, I can hear you okay. If you can just speak as loud as possible into the microphone.
Okay, well, hopefully this helps.
That sounds
so here's
good.
a school roof. Oops, sorry about that. A school roof, another, another theft. They just really didn't think about solar theft. It's kind of interesting that schools, if you go to a school on a weekend, they'll have it locked up like Fort Knox, but up on the roof they've got $2 million worth of solar up there with 4 bolts holding it on. So they're a favorite target of thieves. So what's at stake is expensive insurance deductibles. A lot of these schools and things and counties and cities, they're self-insured. So whenever they have a problem, it comes right out of their pocket. Obviously, you have lost power generation because it often takes months and months to get those solar panels back up and running. Unsightly property damage. One of these wineries that we were working with, the thieves actually took their truck and drove over some vines, through their landscaping, through a wooden fence, and that's how they entered the solar area, was just by driving through and over everything. So they not only had to replace the solar system, they had to replace all their landscaping and even some of their vineyards. So, and also your peace of mind. So those are the things that are at stake. You don't have to worry about it once you have a good anti-theft system. So we kind of went through that pretty quick, Rick. So do we want questions, or shall I just keep barreling through?
No, actually, we had a couple of questions at this point that already come in. The first one was related to law enforcement. What are they doing about this? Are there any special laws for photovoltaic theft, or is it just considered normal property crime?
It's a normal property crime. There are no special laws, and it matters where you are and what law enforcement agency you are working with as to how they treat this. In bigger cities, you call somebody and say you had your solar panels stolen, and they'll tell you to fill out a report online, and you can't even get anybody to come to your facility. But in Napa County, which is adjacent to Sonoma County where we are, they were having so many thefts, and the wine industry is their main industry, so it was a big deal to them. They actually let the dialing system call them directly, which is a little unusual. I wouldn't actually expect that in too many places.
Okay, and I had another question from Dan. He wanted to know if there was any information from law enforcement on who is stealing these, if it's an organized crime or just petty criminals. How are they selling the property that they stole?
Well, it's a good question, and I don't know the whole answer. The folks that have been caught tend to be the petty criminals, you know, not all that bright kind of petty criminals. But there's a lot of theft, and there are a lot of people who aren't being caught. I've heard a number of theories, and I have my own. One theory is that the people who are stealing these things are actually using them for illegal activities themselves, so they're taking them so that they can be offline, and maybe they're growing illegal crops or something. I would tend to think that the people who are stealing these are probably reselling them, and you know, it gives them a leg up in the marketplace in a way by already having free panels.
All right, thanks. So I'll keep bringing those questions in. I'll let Tim continue with the presentation a little bit, and I'll collect some more for the end when we talk about what the solutions are to this stuff. So Tim, back to you.
Okay. So Gridlock, that's our company. And how Gridlock came about is, as my bio said, I've been in this industry for 30 years. It's long before anybody cared about it. So I've been doing a lot of energy efficiency and a lot of solar work. Well, for about the last 10 years, I've been helping people buy solar systems. So a lot of those photos you see, those are actually my customer school districts, wastewater treatment plants, etc. And I would help them by writing bid specifications and bid documents. So as theft started becoming prevalent out here in California, we had to start writing along, you know, a section in our specifications about how we are going to deter theft. We included all of the standard things we discussed in the beginning, locking fasteners and cameras and lights and things like that, but they really just didn't help. So we came up with an idea about how we can stop solar theft. But we were asking solar installers to field engineer and essentially build it themselves. And solar installers are very good at installing solar systems, but they're not necessarily field engineers. So what we decided to do was create a new company. I partnered with a guy who has a control systems machine shop and fabrication shop, and we created Gridlock about 2 years ago. So there's a photo of the Gridlock product. It's reasonably affordable. It's
Oh, I apologize again. Usually lightning only strikes once, but since we know what to do, hang on and I will get Tim right back.
hear me again?
Yes, Tim, we hear you again. I guess we're getting faster this time.
Yeah, maybe I'll talk faster too. So that's how we created Gridlock. And so here's how it kind of works. You know, let's see. I'll take you through kind of the basics of how to install Gridlock. So the first thing is you're installing the box itself, and you can see in the picture on the bottom left, there's a box up there. It looks a little bit different than the current design, in that it has a couple of lights built into it. What we've done is we replaced those incandescent lights with a beacon. What it does is it allows our batteries to last much longer, and it takes a great deal less power to operate. So shade is good. Cooler electronics are longer life. So installing it in somewhere where it's a little bit shaded but still has access so that people can see it is a good installation. And you can see the picture on the right. The people, all they were concerned about was having the dialing system within the gridlock unit. They weren't really worried about the lights. They weren't worried about the audible alarm. So they actually installed it underneath the array because they knew that would be good for it and that it would call them. Avoid flush mounting to a metal wall if possible. That's if you have the dialer in it. They can be purchased with and without a dialing system. You have to consider aesthetics and things in installing it. If you're doing it at a house and you're installing it up high and at somebody's view horizon, you're probably going to get complaints. So you just want to consider where the best place to install it is. And so what you're going to do, the way the system works is you actually thread a wire through the mounting holes in every single module. So every module is stitched together. And what that means is that if they try to remove any single module, they're going to actually have to break or cut that wire. And our system will sense the loss of continuity in the wire, and that will set the system off. So you're going to thread that wire in there, and it's not just a wire, it's actually a cable. It's an outdoor rated telephone cable with 4 conductors, and I'll get to why we have 4 conductors in it in just a minute. Each gridlock unit can have up to 5 loops of wire. The wire can be up to 1,000 feet long per loop for a gridlock 50, or it can be 10,000 feet long per loop for 500. So the 500 is really for kind of almost utility scale systems or megawatt size systems. And the 50 is more for your standard school size system of 100 kW or more. You probably want to, it's easy to put these bushings in. That you can see the little red bushings to help the cable slide through. And you can cut the cable into reasonable lengths too. It's going to be easier to install the cable in 100-foot lengths than to try to do a single 1,000-foot lengths. And what we're doing is we are splicing the cable together using standard RJ11 telephone connectors. And so you get a tool that makes the splicing of the cables very quick and easy to do. And then you have a female-to-female connector there. And then what you're doing is you're taking that cable and you're threading it through the modules and then threading it potentially back through the modules and bringing it back to the gridlock unit in a continuous loop. And the wires are connected to those buses that you see there circled in red. So you have 4 wires going in, 4 wires going out. So you have 8 connectors per loop. And then here's what you're actually doing. The reason we have 4 wires per cable is you're going to create a digital signature out in the field. So, for example, if you have a loop and you've cut it in 5 places to make it easy to install, you're going to splice it together using the RJ11 connectors. But in one of those connectors, just one of them, you're going to want to cut 2 of the wires. And you get to choose which of the wires you cut. And that way you are creating a digital signature that only you know what that digital signature is. So you can see the drawing down below. It says the green is a continuous loop, the red's a continuous loop, but in this case we've cut the yellow and we've cut the black. And that way if somebody tries to bypass the system by jumping it right at the box, they're actually going to set it off by closing the yellow contacts, which are supposed to be open, or closing the black ones, which are supposed to be open. So that's the reason for having 4 different wires out there. So once you have all your loops through your array, you want to test the continuity to make sure your connections are sound. Then you install the AC power. Then you're going to test and commission all the different alarms. And then the last thing you're going to do is once you've tested all those loops, is each of the splices need to be waterproofed. So we're using tape, and then you're once you've sealed it with the tape, you're going to use Scotch coat and cover it in Scotch coat, and it makes it this kind of rubbery mass that's now waterproof. so we don't have to worry about any water getting in there and ruining the connections. And what that also does is it makes every single splice you've done look exactly the same. So any thief that is smart enough to think about trying to bypass it or find where you spliced it, you know, they're just not going to be able to. Anytime they try to take this apart, they'll probably set it off. So then the cellular dialer setup. So you do have to go out and buy a SIM card for the system. And you have to essentially create a new cellular phone for the customer. This is the only ongoing cost of our system. We don't charge any kind of monthly or annual fee, but in order to have the cellular dialer working, you do have to have essentially another telephone. That's what it is. The rates are relatively low because it's basically never going to make a phone call or text anybody. So you can go on a plan that has a very, very low monthly cost, but kind of a high per call, high per text cost. And that way it keeps your costs down. So if you're using the dialer, there is a little bit of programming that you're going to want to do to the system. And the first thing you're going to do is you're going to you connect the programming cable to the system, and you have to have a portable computer with you so that you can connect into the computer, and up will pop a screen that looks like this one shown here. And it's kind of funny, the terminology in here, but it's just follow me 1, follow me 2, follow me 3. These are phone numbers that you can put in there. So you can put up to 8 different phone numbers into the system. And then you'll notice the next line, it says SMS or voice. So you can either have it text people or you can have it actually do a voice call. The texts are nice because texts take slightly narrower bandwidth. So you don't have to have quite as good of cellular service in the area to get the text out. But some people really like the voice. So you can see that you have up to 8 different phone numbers there. Then the next part of it is we have 4 different events that can be recorded. And these are the defaults in it. Event number 1 is that we have a solar panel theft. Event number 2 is that you're losing your AC power. You have an AC power failure. But you'll also notice that there's an event number 2 or input number 2 restore, which is AC power on. And then the third one we have is battery maintenance required. Now, to go back to the AC power, we often we assume that some thieves are going to start by trying to disconnect the AC from the gridlock system and hoping that that shuts it off, but that's not the way the gridlock works. Gridlock continues to operate without AC power and protect your system. The AC power failure could just be a utility power outage, and as we know, those are temporary. So often temporary. So what we want to do is also call and tell you when your power comes back on. Now, the next screen is how you connect the 2 previous screens. So if I go back to, we have 8 different phone numbers, and we have 4 different messages or 4 different events. Only 3 of them are being used right here. And then you go to this next screen, and you see along the top up here, I assume you can see my pointer. You see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those are your phone numbers. And then we have our events, the 1 through 4. So what we're doing here is we're saying in the event, remember input 1 event was solar panel theft. So in that case, we wanted to call everybody. We wanted to call, a central monitoring station. We wanted to call on-call staff. We wanted to call maintenance people. We wanted to call the manager of the facility. So we wanted to call everybody. But if you remember, event number 2 was an AC power outage. Well, if you have an AC power outage, you probably don't want it to call the owners or the police. You probably want it to call your maintenance person so the maintenance person can go out and see what happened to the power out there. So that's how this works. You get to decide who gets called for what alarm. And the third event was battery, what do we call it? Here, let me go back. the third event was battery maintenance required. The battery is designed to be replaced every 2 to 3 years. It's essentially the same type of battery that you have in your car, so it could last much longer than that. We haven't had any failures yet. But as the voltage drops, there's a certain point where it will call you and tell you that you need to go out and do maintenance on your battery. So there you are. You're all done. You can sleep peacefully. And that's essentially the end of the presentation. So we got through it pretty quick, even with a few glitches. So here's some contact information. There's me, Tim Holmes, and you can call or email me at any time. Tyson Berg is listed on there. Mark Fye is our field service. Our head engineer is John Morris, who's not listed on here, but you can always call the 800 number and track him down if you need him. But always the best place to start is just start with me. And that's it.
Thank you, Tim. If any of the people in the audience have questions, I have a couple that have come in. If there's any others, go ahead and type them into the chat window. We have a little bit of a discussion. First, Tim, are you willing to make a PDF version of this presentation available to the group along with the recording afterwards?
That's fine, yes.
Okay, so about an hour after this webinar ends, we'll have a recording. We'll edit out the little downtimes that we had along with the PDF version, so you'll be able to go back and look at previous slides. The first question I had was from Alan. So what about, can you say anything about the risk of someone getting electrocuted on your property while trying to seal PV panels? And I guess that's the scenario, like what happens if somebody's breaking into your kitchen and they trip and break their leg and then they try to sue you. Is there, has anything like that safety-wise been seen in your experience?
Well, there's two answers to it. One is the gridlock product, all the wire that we are cabling through, that's all low voltage stuff. So anybody can install it. It doesn't have to be buried. You can touch the wires, and there's such low voltage and low current that you can't even feel any of the current going through. However, a solar system is a little bit of a different issue. If it's daytime and the sun is shining on it, a solar panel produces energy. And when you connect a solar panel to another solar panel in a string, what you are doing is you're cranking up the voltage to a working voltage. And commonly, you're up above 400 volts DC. So if you imagine those quick connectors, if you were to try to disconnect it and you are on the high voltage end of that string, you have 400 volts in your hands as you're pulling those two cables apart. And as you pull them apart, they will continue to arc even after they are apart. And so you pull them apart, and you could watch them arc across. You probably have to have 6 inches of separation before they are going to stop arcing. So, you know, the folks who are stealing these things do know a little bit about this. Otherwise, you know, we would find some of these guys there the morning after. So anybody working on a solar system anytime needs to be very, very careful, because you are working with something, you know, high voltage DC power, which is a completely different animal than AC.
Okay, thanks. The next question was related to cost. Three-part question. Cost of the gridlock system, the cost of an average panel theft, and cost, are there insurance premium reductions by having a theft prevention system in place?
To answer the last one first, Solar Insure is a company out there that insures solar systems specifically, and they provide a discount for the gridlock system being installed. The first part of the question, I actually had a slide at the end here, is there's a lot of economy of scale in the gridlock system, and it was designed for medium to large systems, but it works just as well for small residential type systems. The difference is the cost goes up. So this chart you see here, down on the bottom, you can see that we have kilowatts. It starts at 10, goes up to 490 or 500. but you can see at the low end, we're having this materials cost. This isn't even installed cost. This is just materials. Materials cost of 12 cents a watt. But you can see as it gets bigger, it's dropping down to a half of a cent per watt. So it's very cost effective on the larger systems. It's a little pricey on the smaller ones. And there was a third question in it.
It was about the cost of the average panel theft. How many panels they steal? Is it like the pickup truck size, I would imagine?
Well, yeah. Most of the time they're taking 20 panels at a shot, but sometimes they are hitting multiple sites. School districts will have 3 or 4 sites hit in a night, and we don't know if they're hitting one, unloading, hitting another, and then unloading. The wastewater treatment plant in those pictures where they stole 130 of them, we believe they did that all in one shot. I think they had a nice big flatbed truck, and they were able to get 130 modules onto one truck. And a single module, these days, a module is, an inexpensive one is probably $400 to $500, and some of them are still $500 to $600 per module.
And then you have all of the lost labor. I know the common problem with copper thieves are that the amount of copper they steal is pretty inconsequential compared to the replacement labor to put the system back together.
That's right. You have a lot of labor costs. You also have damage. Thieves don't really care if they damage something in the process of stealing it. So, and not just in the solar array, but as I mentioned about the winery, they're running over plants and things, and that's inconsequential to them.
Okay, and we've gone over a little bit, but I'll finish up one more question. This is from Dan. Is the product designed to be installed by the EPC installers or after the fact by Gridlock, or in either case?
It's designed to be installed when the system is going in. If you can imagine a large array like the wastewater treatment plant, there's a lot of distance between each array. They have many rows. If the cables that we're installing can be laid on the ground, but every time you went to mow in between the arrays, you'd end up mowing up the cable and having to repair it. So it makes sense to actually get it underground in a conduit, have it rise back up, do your loop, back down, and keep it underground. Also, it does require 120. So as you're building the system, you want to have some place where you can pull some 120 to power the system, which is usually very easy over where the inverters are installed. So it can be installed after the fact. There are some challenges. If it's a roof-mounted system and it's flush to the roof, then you have to take the modules off, and that's not very good. So again, you want to do it when it's installed. If it's a ground-mounted system, it's relatively easy to thread that stuff through. So if it's a smaller system, it can pretty much be done by a homeowner, except for the 120 you have to be careful with.
Okay, thank you very much. And that will conclude today's webinar. I'd like to thank our presenter, Tim Holmes, and you see his contact information here on his screen. The audio and video recording will be available after today's presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the questions and answers. And also I'd like to thank our sponsor, Principal Solar. Principal is in the business of buying and operating existing solar assets, and you can visit them at principalsolar.com.